the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi. Minister, good morning and welcome to the program. I'm not sure if you were able to hear Juanita's package there, but when you watch Judge Lopes give that judgment and you look at what the implications in particular for the asbestos corruption matter and that case going forward, which we also saw is now being postponed to the first quarter of next year, it gives you the sense that this is incredibly messy. When you look at it, what are your thoughts?
Look, I would not comment on a criminal matter. I'm going to comment, Iman, and good morning to you and your listeners on the issues that relates to extradition. I do think that looking at the issue of extradition, because this is triggered by the SCA judgment on the Schultz matter, that would have happened. So cases, and the unfortunate part is that the Schultz case then looked at issues retrospectively, meaning even those that had happened before that. So afterwards, you'd have had tighter mechanisms to be able to ensure that the cases are done. If you look at Cholota matter and the briefing I've received, you'd have had, my spokesperson was explaining that I've convened a meeting. So the Cholota matter is that at the time when the SCA judgment was done, the matter was already before the US courts. So all submissions and documents were done at the US. And therefore, that's why you couldn't submit new information and all that. That's the report I get from the team. So hence, I would have taken a decision to say, okay, let's look at all the cases, make sure that where there's been a process that could have been compromised, we correct it. And let me explain to the public, on the Cholota matter, the minister did receive the memo. And the memo was processed by the Department of Justice. What had happened is that the letter that was signed was not the letter that is signed by the minister. So in many others already, I'm starting to get that, no, this one, it's clear we are fine. The minister signed. I think people were saying the Gupta's one, the minister actually signed that's extradition request. So it doesn't have any threat on it. So we'll look at all of them one by one to do. As we go since yesterday, the team is working to sift the ones that are actually said to not have been signed. Others, you find that it's a memo that has been approved by the minister, and therefore the minister would have been signing the memo but not signing the letter. And those things. So that's what we are correcting, and that's what we are almost like cleaning up. And then the other issue...
But Minister, sorry, before you go forward, because I want to just circle back, if you don't mind, on that particular letter. So you said he signed, that the minister, so this would have been Ronald Lamola at the time, who was Justice Minister, would have signed the memo but not the letter. But we see later on down the line the impact then of that on court. How else could the judge in this matter have interpreted that? I know that you're loath to comment on individual cases per se, but it has led to a scenario where it's created a major setback in one of the marquee cases that the NPA is hoping to secure a win on, and this is in the asbestos matter.
Look, one of the issues I'm getting from the team is that this matter was raised in passing. They didn't think the Schultz case would have been a substantive matter and has not been fully exhausted in that court to have been the center of a judgment. And that's what they're raising. And they can deal with it in terms of details. But because I wanted to understand, how did we not explain that the minister did see the matter? The minister did okay the matter. It might not have been the letter that has been signed. So it's those things that we have to pay attention to. But secondly, it's the issue of process. You'd remember the issue of a trial within a trial started after the issues. So it's those things that we adapt into as the team will do. And I think those nitty-gritties will be dealt with by the NPA from our side as the department. And that's why I'm saying, for example, since I've been here, all extradictions were signed by me. And in terms of authorization. So would ensure that they are done. Previously, there would be the issue that the DG signs, the minister would approve the extradition, and therefore the letter but would be signed by the DG. Now, the issue for me here is that the fact that the minister has approved the extradition, it shouldn't be said that it's illegal or it's unlawful. And those are the issues that we'll have to deal with in all the other cases to say, but this is the proof. Because we don't send the memo, we send the letter. So it's that in explanation. No. The memo has been seen by the minister, and the minister has been able to. And that, I don't think it is something that people could say it was negligent, even from the department of my predecessors. In any powers that you have as the minister, you are able to delegate. So I could say that I'm approving in terms of the process, certify myself that this is correct, but on the signing of the letters, I'm delegating it to the deputy, the director general. So you are able to put that in as a mechanism in place on administrative matters. And when a question arises on administrative justice, how you did that, you can be able to explain it.
But we know that the legal system relies on specificity. So if that signature doesn't have the signature of the minister, it does have the impact of creating this delay that we're now seeing. And my understanding is, Minister, please correct me if I'm wrong, that this was a similar thing that happened with the Gupta extradition attempt when we tried to bring back Rajesh and Atul Gupta to South Africa, because the UAE authorities said that we had incorrect information that didn't meet its own standards. So these things are costing us in a big way, because they're not only costing us the closing of that loop in terms of the administration of justice, but it's also costing a lot to keep these matters in court. How do you view it against that backdrop?
Look, I think the issue here, Iman, is that the cases are different. Each case has its own issues and its own merit. On the Gupta, it's not correct that they didn't submit the right information. They were given by the country the forms they must complete. They completed those forms. And you'd remember at the time, it would be the issue that, okay, we didn't have, and Minister Lamula would have explained, we didn't have a mutual legal assistance instrument in place between ourselves and that country. That's the first thing. Then that had to be put in place. That's why the delay. When that was put in place, and because this was the first case of us doing mutual legal agreement between them and utilizing that tool in terms of implementation, then we were given the form. We requested the updated forms and all the required documents to fill. And when that process has been done, completed, it's only later then at the court level that the court said, no, you are utilizing wrong forms, which were provided by the state of UAE. And that's why it led to restart. And what they required is that the process must be restarted. So it's a whole different scenario compared to this one.
All right, and I guess we learn more as it goes forward. As you say, you've ordered now a comprehensive review of all of these extradition requests, this one included. I want to go back to your perception, and you had used the word rebuilding the NPA in an interview, that, you know, especially in respect of the aftermath and the legacy of a state capture, hollowing out of the NPA. Just talk to us about what that rebuilding looks like and what is broken, because you only rebuild something that's broken. So what's broken in the NPA?
The issue is that we've lost quite a lot of skills in the NPA. We've got quite a number of vacancies. You'd have seen now in the past 3 months, we've been advertising prosecutorial positions, advocates in various provinces, in various courts, in terms of building capacity, because when things were wrong were happening, people who were professionals, people who did not want to damage their careers, they left. And you were left with quite a number that were others, yes, resisted internally, remain to protect the institution, but others remained to continue to break. So that's why you talk about rebuilding after an aftermath as such of the state capture. So that's one of the things that we're talking about. The second area is that in the national leadership, you are seeing quite a number of national leadership that is going out in terms of their retirement, that would require us to rebuild, being able to bring in new capacity, various skills. But again, you look at what we're dealing with, because today, the nature of the cases that we are dealing with are much more complex, are not the previous, and therefore rebuilding will mean that we bring the expertise, knowledge that we need, specialized skills that we need to be able to capacitate NPA to respond to the current challenges.
I mean, it's almost as if you can sense, and I don't know how you feel, right, when you see losses in court from the NPA. because one of the things you've wanted and insisted on is that prosecutors enroll trial-ready cases. But we've seen high-profile cases where, you know, the cases either collapse or they get withdrawn. And the question from the public is, who's being held accountable for repeated failures, and what consequences are you demanding for poor prosecutorial decisions? We know that one of the things was an explanation in the Omotoso case that the NDPP then embarked on to try and understand why those prosecutors were eviscerated by the judge in that matter, and what remedial actions they were going to take. But does it disappoint you as well, these high-profile losses? I mean, I'm thinking New Lane, I'm thinking Machela Koko, I'm thinking a number of different cases where there was a promise of success and nothing happened.
Yeah, where I get worried more is when a case is the perpetrator is acquitted, or the matter is completely thrown out of court. Where there's a withdrawal, remember, within the law, it could be a prosecutorial strategy when you realize that in the process of dealing with the case, there's new information that you have not put before the court, and you'd like to repackage your case. Instead of it being thrown out of court, repackage it properly and bring it when it's ready. So one of the things, Iman, I've asked the NPA is that, can you give me the statistics in the last 3 years of the cases that you have withdrawn, and how many have you re-enrolled? So I will be dealing with that as part of their performance management, so that in the stats we are able to reflect this, because not all cases that have been withdrawn don't get re-enrolled.
Yeah.
The second issue is that in the work that we do, and this is what we appreciate as the portfolio, and I've said to the NPA, the NDPP, and everybody else, we need to appreciate, while we might have 90% of the cases that are not high profile, that South African citizens are experiencing justice. In the last 5 days, for example, the last week on gender-based violence, because I've taken this as one of the areas we are monitoring, and you would have seen that at least in that week alone, we had more than 5 cases that have gone before court, successful prosecution with life sentences in many of them. So that's a result of an NPA that works in. And I want to denounce this notion that gives an impression that everything has collapsed at NPA. It hasn't. There are many prosecutors in every court working around the clock to ensure that there's justice and victims find justice. And we are seeing those outcomes. What we are battling with is this high-profile cases, Iman, and which we are now starting to pay attention. And I'm saying to the NPA, can you put together mechanisms in place so that you do not enroll them when they are not ready, but you do not even suffer the blows that sometimes you suffer? And that work is continuing, and we are meeting regularly. We are engaging, as we heard that immediately when the Cholota case had happened, I called for an urgent meeting because I understood the implication of the extradition, and to say to them what needs to be done. Within 2 hours of the judgment, we held a meeting, and then we said what needs to be done to protect other cases. So interventions will happen. Complexity of cases does arise over time in the 31 years that we have been doing. Some of the cases that we are dealing with today are not the same as what we dealt with previously. And that's why, as we go, we're recording how we should do things. As we go, we're recording the improvement. But more so, I've said to the NDPP, it's important to provide support and intensive monitoring on all the cases that South Africans are raising as a matter of concern.
A matter and discussion, Minister, I'm sure we'll continue to have in the weeks ahead. Thank you for your time this morning. The Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko Kubayi.